This is beginning fencing, and this is part 3 of lesson number 2. Just a couple of quick things, sort of a program note. As I was doing these lessons with Will, I realized that something I was doing was that I was coaching Will rather than acting like a fencer with Will. So you will see me standing up straight and the way I'm attacking, and especially with the footwork I'm using, it's more like what I would do with a coach when I was working with him. If you want the better example of stances and footwork for actually fencing, look at Will, don't look at me. So, the other thing that I wanted to just discuss very quickly in this video is, how did fencing get its name? And from the previous parts of this video, we discussed that there were guys who were in the Army about the middle of the 1500s, early 1500s. Guns started becoming useful on battlefields. Knights started becoming less useful. The knights stopped calling themselves knights, started calling themselves lords and earls and barons and all those kind of things. And they dropped the use of lances and all of those type of weapons that knights used. Were going more to swords and guns themselves. Some of the problems that the knights had was that they couldn't, fight with their lances, which is how they had done one-on-one duels. They went to using swords to duel with. The swords they had been using were broadswords. And the new, longer, thinner rapiers were something they were not as familiar with using as these lowly peasants, who had been fighting with them in various army, campaigns and everything. So some of the guys that were in the Army got the bright idea, Army life has changed, we're not getting shot at. And I can be killed by some guy 100 yards away who isn't really even aiming at me and just happens to hit me. Where before I was face to face with this guy, and if I was skilled at what I was doing, I had a better chance of surviving. So some of those guys drop out of the Army and got to come up with some way to make money. And one of the things they realize is that the noblemen don't know how to use rapiers yet. So they go, hey, I can overcharge these really, really rich guys for lessons on how to use rapiers rather than broadswords, because it's a different skill set. So they go out and they start schools of defense. And they bring in the people and give them lessons, and so that when a nobleman goes out to do a duel, they'll survive. Well, after a few years, that got shortened down to schools of fence. And then after a few more years, that got called fencing schools. And that's how fencing got its name. And that's the end of this lesson.